Jesus. Never mind. All right. Never mind that. All right. So we are streaming. Good morning, everyone. As I have stated in the past, my desire is that I'll be able to do a daily podcast on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday at least. Hopefully between the hours of 4 and 6, or at least 4 and 5. However, there are going to be times that I'm going to offer some shorter podcasts at various points in the day when I have an inspiration to do so, or when I'm needing to respond to something that is very important that's happening. Well, this morning, in the early hours of the morning, I feel like I had something of an inspiration, and I want to share this with you this morning. I'm hoping in the future that what you're about to see in this podcast is what the majority of our future podcasts are going to look like, okay? So, I want to read this to you. I wrote this morning. I would title this today, A Warning Concerning the Massive Shift in Tax Burdens and the Failure of duly elected Democrats to do all that was necessary to try and ensure that our republic endured. Trump and the mega GOP's plan is simple. Take credit for lowering federal taxes while forcing the states and local municipalities to have to heavily tax in an effort to compensate for those services no longer provided by the federal government. The only way the states can do all the things that the federal government used to do through agencies like FEMA, Department of Health, Department of Education, Department of Transportation, Department of Energy, Department of Health, Environmental Protection Agency, etc., is for each state, city, and town to raise their taxes to insanely high levels. This will include higher sales taxes, state income taxes, and property taxes. Taxes on motor vehicles and other equipment used on the roads, that includes things like campers, trailers, motorcycles, and the like, will all have to be raised in an effort to provide funding for local roads and state highways. The federal government can collect taxes from rich and poor states alike and then distribute funds and services according to need. If each state is supposed to carry their own load, as Donald Trump suggests, the poorest states are going to be in huge trouble, as there is no way on earth they are going to be able to collect enough taxes to provide for their every need, especially as they relate to natural disasters. And mega Trump worshippers will not blame Trump when their states start having to tax at rates around 30% or better. They will be blaming their local governors, mayors, aldermen, and other local officials for this sudden rise in taxation at state and local levels. Folks, but when you consider the load states and local governments will have to carry, it will be impossible for them to do so without collecting ridiculously high taxes. States with fewer citizens, like the Dakotas and, Iowa, mostly farming and agricultural states, will be forced to collect even higher taxes as any organization having fewer people has to collect more from each person if the needs of the state are to be met. The repercussions of Trump's insane policies, destroying these departments and making certain they cannot be easily or quickly restored, are going to have long-term repercussions. States will have to make choices about programs which their citizens have long depended on in favor of meeting basic needs like road maintenance and infrastructure. Head Start, senior programs, emergency services will wind up having to be cut back or entirely cut in some communities in order to allow the state and local governments to address needs which were long subsidized by the federal government. Deteriorating infrastructure, poor roads, horrendous public education, lessening state-provided services, poor health care, contaminated water, land, and air are things that we can look forward to. The concept of a strong federal government providing such services at a national level is far wiser than the ludicrous notion of forcing the burden to be placed on the states. Just imagine the burden being placed on states like California with their frequent forest fires and earthquakes, not to mention the burden on states much smaller with far fewer people like Hawaii, who themselves recently experienced a massive fire that destroyed over 1,000 acres and killed more than 100 people on the Isle of Maui and destroyed over 2,200 buildings. People are soon to learn that when calamity strikes, their federal government is going to be uncaring and disinterested in their troubles. Insurance companies are bound to stop offering insurance in areas where natural disasters are more common, as they will know that the full weight of responsibility for the financial losses in those areas will now be falling solely upon them without any help from FEMA. There will be so many unintended, quote-unquote, repercussions from this kind of brainless policy, which is the brainchild of a sick and selfish mind, that we will be seeing the quick deterioration of many of the poorer states. I doubt it will take a decade for the deterioration and destruction caused by these policies to be painfully obvious. Florida's Republican Governor Ron DeSantis will no longer be able to request the president declare a disaster area and offer immediate services and long-term financial assistance from the long-decried federal agency FEMA. With poorer states not having the resources from within their own state to provide a decent education, the number of students from those states going on to college will likely fall, as grades will not be adequate for many to be able to qualify for college entrance. Class sizes in public education will grow, and the load expected to be carried by teachers will rise exponentially. I can only imagine that many states will wind up finding it hard to even keep teachers on, as they will not be able to bear the burden of classes with 40 to 50 students or more. Once again, the policies created by small minds claiming to have all the answers will backfire in a massive way on the poorest and most vulnerable among us. I doubt most governors are going to be able to even find ways to meet all of the needs within their state. State bureaucracies will have to grow as states will now have to create agencies of their own to address the issues once addressed by federal agencies. The public health will suffer as well in poorer states, as they will find it difficult to regulate and monitor water, air, and land quality standards. Services once provided by the EPA will now fall on the individual states. State roads and highways will deteriorate, as will state-operated bridges and tunnels. I can easily see many deaths and tragedies occurring in the long term as bridges collapse and tunnels cave in, the byproduct of states suddenly being saddled with the full cost of maintaining and improving state-owned infrastructure. So many mega minions have ignorantly and foolishly cheered on Trump and as he destroys what has taken many decades to build. As needs were identified, the federal government has tried to address the issues and provide a means whereby the states could be served without their having to alone bear the responsibility for developing agencies, creating computer programs, establishing policies and standards, not to mention the costs associated with having to build or buy property out of which these new state agencies could operate. Intelligent governance would have understood that many agencies might be streamlined and made more effective, but utterly destroying these agencies in one fell swoop is the apex friend of pure stupidity, as it clearly drops an enormous weight upon the states, which will have to scramble in an effort to try and find ways to provide services once provided through federal agencies that Trump and MAGA have abolished. Interestingly enough, big businesses do not believe that it is best for small businesses to dot the landscape. Sorry, folks. As they are better able to serve the public and provide goods and services to the population. You know, big business doesn't think it's better for there to be small business, providing services and goods to the population. No, not at all. That's not how they think. Big business eats up small local businesses, and they grow larger and larger by the day, using their buying power as their locations grow to purchase wholesale goods at a far less price than the small businesses could ever attain those goods, as their sheer size and the potential for sales volume motivates manufacturers and wholesalers to offer goods at a lesser price per item. But these same massive corporate giants want us to believe that states and municipalities are better equipped to provide goods and services to the state and local populations, as the federal government has grown far too big and has become less and less effective and efficient. How is it that their thinking is grow, as it relates to their businesses, but they do not see government growth as the necessary byproduct of ever-expanding needs for various essential services. While the GOP has long been programming their mindless minions to believe that all federally provided services are a bad thing, most of those same people do not even know what most of the agencies they are now watching being destroyed even do. The reality is the federal government is far better able to attain goods and services at much lower rates, just like any corporate giant. They're able to buy in bulk and benefit from volume pricing. State and local governments will not be buying at the same levels, and therefore they will have to pay higher prices, once again forcing taxation to go up. While the mega base has been screaming that they did not want a socialist state taking 40% or more of their paycheck, they will soon find out that this very thing is going to happen. The entities, however, collecting these high taxes will be state and local governments instead of the federal government. Again, while it is true that many federal agencies and departments are in need of modernization, streamlining, and efficiency improvements, the fact remains that when the federal government addresses these issues, it is able to do so while placing a much lighter tax load on the citizenry. No one in the Democratic Party was calling for the federal government to own and run all means of manufacturing of essential goods or the provision of all essential services like electricity, water, etc. That, my friend, is what socialism is. But these foolish Republicans have allowed themselves to be led by the nose as the GOP has peddled the message, Democrats want to turn our country into a socialist country. If the Republican base understood what socialism even is, they would have known better. But they believe ignorance is bliss. As Adolf Hitler once mused, how fortunate for government that the people they administer don't think. End quote. The Republican Party has long appealed to the uneducated and poorly informed. These groups of people are the most easily manipulated using fear-mongering and demonization of those on the other side of the aisle. Most online podcast personalities are trying to encourage Americans to just wait 2 years and then we can begin to fix all the mess Trump is making. But they are ignoring the fact that Trump is grinding to dust the institutions within our government so that they cannot possibly be easily or quickly restored. At the rate the new Nazi Party, otherwise known as MAGA, is moving, it is not unreasonable to think that they will have sufficiently trampled the Constitution and ignored the rule of law sufficiently to ensure that they can do those things necessary, listen, to prevent any future elections. Do you honestly think that at the rate of our Constitution presently being ignored and trampled upon, that the arrest of Democrats in the House and Senate as quote-unquote domestic enemies of the state are not going to be occurring long before the scheduled 2026 midterm elections. Our republic will not exist, my friend, in 2 years. Anyone who knows and understands history can easily see this to be true. Trump and MAGA hit the ground running this time around, and they have made it abundantly clear in less than 1 month's time that their ultimate goal is the full destruction of our republic and the establishment of a dictatorship with oligarch and theocratic elements. Folks, this was the tactic utilized by Hitler in the 1930s. Personally, I have no doubt in my mind that Trump and MAGA are modeling their current strategy after the strategy used by Hitler to transform Germany's democracy into a dictatorship, which he was able to accomplish in 53 days. Thus far, the second Trump administration has followed the Hitler handbook to the letter. Why should we think for one moment that they will not follow through with that well-documented and highly effective strategy that Hitler used in the 1930s? Mind you, Hitler used the laws of Germany to destroy the laws and constitution of Germany. The failed Nazi coup attempt of 1923 mirrored our own pitiful, disorganized coup attempt of January 6, 2021. I'd like to read to you from Smithsonian Magazine, their website article dated November 8, 2023, authored by Ellen Wexler, Assistant Editor, Humanities. Now listen. In 1923, a decade before he became Germany's chancellor, 34-year-old Adolf Hitler slipped into a beer hall in Munich, where he would make his first clumsy fledgling grasps at power. A crowd of around 3,000 had gathered at the Burgerbräukeller beer hall to hear Gustav Ritter von Kahr, the Bavarian state commissioner, give a speech. As they listened, hundreds of members of Hitler's SA, the paramilitary group known as the Brown Shirts, surrounded the venue. Hitler, then the leader of the nascent Nazi Party, paced inside the foyer, waiting for his big moment. It came at around 8:45 p.m. on November 8th. He threw his beer glass to the floor and made a beeline for the stage, flanked by armed guards. Chaos reigned in the hall. To stifle it, Hitler climbed onto a chair and fired a pistol into the air, then scurried to the stage. "National revolution is underway," he cried. He explained that 600 armed men now guarded the Burgerbräukeller, and nobody could leave, not alive anyway, without his permission. The Bavarian government has been deposed, he claimed, and a new government had risen in its place. All of this was, of course, a bluff, but he hoped that it would be true soon enough, writes historian David King in The Trial of Adolf Hitler, the Beer Hall Putsch, and the Rise of Nazi Germany. He was sweating considerably. He looked crazy, drunk, or both. The Burgerbräukeller Beer Hall in Munich had Trump been tried as a seditionist, folks, we might have had half a chance at putting off the GOP's long established plan to discard our Constitution and replace our constitutional republic with a theocratic oligarchy hybrid with a figurehead dictator at the top. I literally just learned this morning, early this morning, I was doing some research online, and I was looking at Project 2025, and I found that the beginnings of Project 2025 actually date back as far as 1981, which I found really interesting because for over 20 years I've been prophesying that there was a plan within the GOP to do exactly what they're doing. And just today I found out that indeed this plan has been in the makings going back as far as 1981. But alas, our Democrat administration for 4 years acted as though the matter was not urgent and allowed for Trump to be able to run for and win a second term. How they could not have known exactly what is about to happen is beyond my ability to understand. Surely the Department of Justice had ample knowledge and plenty of intelligence and evidence of the mega plan. They certainly had a clear outline of the plan when Project 2025 was published and issued publicly in April 2023, a full year and a half before the 2024 elections. If they were paralyzed by fear of a potential civil war breaking out in reaction to Trump's arrest and trial, at least we would have had a Democrat in the White House who would have employed our National Guard, military, and federal law enforcement agencies in an effort to try and preserve our republic. Once the levers of power were handed back to Trump, frankly, my friend, we were doomed. Almost identical to the story of Hitler. It was his second attempt at attaining a place of power after a failed attempted coup that allowed Hitler to carry out his plan and destroy Germany's constitutional democracy from within. Frankly, folks, I believe this Biden could have been a 21st century Lincoln, but he chose instead to cower in fear, and our republic will be lost because of his failure to act. There is going to be violence at levels we have not seen in this country since the first Civil War. I've got news for you, my friend. It is coming. Don't doubt that. But the key factor that would have changed our outcome was a matter of political musical chairs. If a Democrat sat in the Oval Office, our chances would have been far greater that our constitutional republic could be saved. As it stands now, all violence carried out in the name of Trump and MAGA will be fully supported and reinforced by the Oval Office. We had an opportunity when the Lord mercifully allowed us a Democrat administration for 4 years. Biden and the Democrats utterly ignored the dangers of allowing Trump to go unchecked after his treasonous conduct in organizing and participating in the insurrection of 2021. As I have said before, the Democrats always bring a butter knife to a gunfight. Under the extreme dangers existing after January 6th, 2021, Biden could have made good use of the permissions given a president by the Supreme Court on July 1st, 2024, 4 months prior to the election. And I'm just speaking real plain, folks. I told you I'm not interested in playing games, okay? A clandestine operation could have been carried out against the most dangerous domestic enemy of our Constitution since Jefferson Davis. After all, the president's oath includes his swearing to defend the Constitution against all enemies, both foreign and domestic. Now you can be sure that Trump and the new Nazi Party, again, they call themselves MAGA, will utilize that Supreme Court decision in ways we cannot even imagine. We couldn't imagine the ways that they're going to use that decision were it not for the lessons of history. I am still personally fully convinced that the so-called failed assassination attempt on Trump in Butler, Pennsylvania on July 13, 2024 was nothing more than a Reichstag fire. It was a coordinated and choreographed drama meant to create sympathy for Trump in an effort to help ensure his re-election 4 months later. If you're not familiar with the Reichstag incident in Germany, I'll read this paragraph to you from Wikipedia concerning it. The Reichstag fire was an arson attack on the Reichstag building, which is the home of the German parliament in Berlin, on Monday, the 27th of February, 1933. Precisely 4 weeks after Adolf Hitler was sworn in as Chancellor of Germany. Marinus van der Lubbe, a Dutch council communist, was the culprit. The Nazis attributed the fire to a group of communist agitators, used it as a pretext, listen, to claim that communists were plotting against the German government and induced President Paul von Hindenburg to issue the Reichstag fire decree suspending civil liberties and pursue a ruthless confrontation with the communists. This made the fire pivotal in the establishment of Nazi Germany. The responsibility for the Reichstag fire remains a topic of debate and research, as while van der Lubbe was found guilty, it is unclear whether he acted alone. While most historians accept that the Reichstag was set ablaze by van der Lubbe, some view that the fire was a part of a Nazi plot to take power. Folks, interestingly enough, Trump's ear miraculously healed without so much as a small scar in record time. Once again, his minions believe this is evidence of his supernatural nature and divine providence. The shooter was shot and killed. Therefore, it is impossible for information that we would need in order to make, to be sure exactly what happened and why, died with him. The young man, 20-year-old Thomas Matthew Crooks of Bethel Park, Pennsylvania, was registered as a Republican voter in the state of Pennsylvania. In closing, I want to sound the warning concerning the soon-to-come massive rise in local and state taxes. Our new dictator-in-chief has no interest in federal tax money going anywhere but into his own pockets. He will reward his oligarch supporters, as did Hitler, with lucrative contracts, and will openly carry himself in a corrupt and integrity-less fashion, much as he did during Trump 1.0. Our American experiment, my friend, I'm afraid to say, has ended. We had a window of opportunity to cut off the head of the snake, but our elected officials squandered any opportunity they had and allowed for a convicted felon and adjudicated insurrectionist to run for office again and win the election of 2024. History will curse Biden and Attorney General Merrick Garland in their graves for allowing an obvious plan to overthrow our constitutional republic to go unchallenged. Dozens of our own retired military officers, former Trump cabinet members, and White House staffers warned of the existential threat Trump posed to our nation. It is not as though we did not know he was going to be the death of our democracy. So if we are not going to learn from history, and instead we are going to allow it to repeat itself, we might as well also include this page. Retired German General Erich Ludendorff, a former supporter of Hitler's, just like John Kelly, just like General Milley, said in a telegram to German President Paul von Hindenburg upon Hitler's appointment as Chancellor, by appointing Hitler Chancellor of the Reich, you have handed over our sacred German fatherland to one of the greatest demagogues of all time. I prophesy to you, this evil man will plunge our Reich into the abyss and will inflict immeasurable woe on our nation. Future generations will curse you in your grave for this action. End quote. Folks, it'll be my opinion until the day I die that Biden and the Democrats in total have done the same. And their fate will be the same as that of German President von Hindenburg's. His name and the whole, Biden's name that is, and the whole of the Democratic parties will be cursed in their graves for having handed over our nation to one who was clearly, repeatedly, and undisputably one of the greatest demagogues of all time. And they well knew this to be the case. I wanted to share this with you this morning. Again, these thoughts came to me in the wee hours of the morning, and I felt the need to share them with you as quickly as I possibly could. That will be all for my podcast this morning. I hope that you will join me again the next time we are able to be with you, which, God willing, will be Thursday, probably likely at 4 o'clock, okay? Thursday at 4 o'clock is my next scheduled podcast. However, again, when I have quick words to share with you, as I've just done, I may offer some quick podcasts as well. All right, my friend, I've said my piece. I hope that this warning is something that you can take into account, contemplate, use reason, folks. Think it out. The things that I've said makes perfect sense. I think any thinking person can see that. And until we meet again, God bless you in Jesus' name.
Welcome to A Voice of Reason in Turbulent Times with Pastor Charles Burnett-Morrow. Get ready to hear inconvenient, yet very necessary, truths about what is happening in our world today.